Welcome, Will. We're going to give it a few more minutes and let other attendees join, but we're glad to have you. Okay. Will, if you'll just give us one more minute, we'll get started. Alicia, welcome to the room. Glad to have you. While we're waiting, I'm going to do a quick fun slideshow of some of our kids doing fun things. Something to look at while we wait. Look at those kids having so much fun. He caught his first fish. Okay. All right, we're going to stop this share and I'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. And welcome to the Art of Negotiating. You can find any of our webinars on our website, that we've hosted all this time. And so the last month was Grit, Nurturing Perseverance. You can watch any of them. You just click on the icon, and I think we probably have over 50 webinars available online. You're also welcome to share these with anybody. These are not proprietary information. They're just simply available for dissemination to anyone who might need or benefit from that information. But with that, let's get started with today's webinar, which is the art of negotiating. And so this is a conglomeration of years of trying to convince kids to do things the way that we want them to do it, B, having them try and convince us, and realizing what a terrific opportunity this is for kids to learn self-advocacy. Some of the techniques I'm going to share with you today also help streamline conversations. They're going to give both participants in the conversation the opportunity to practice conflict resolution. We're going to examine some different approaches and some techniques and tips and tricks that I learned in some communication workshops that I attended years ago, in terms of how to make and convince others of your point and perspective. It is when you are negotiating with somebody, it is an opportunity to nurture a relationship and not necessarily just get your way. And then it also gives each of us a chance to examine what are our real priorities, and so whenever I engage into a negotiation, whether it's with employees or with my children or with kids at SOAR or with vendors, I really want, before I go into that conversation, I want to know what it is that I really want. And oftentimes one of my rules is if they walk away a little unhappy and I walk away a little unhappy and I didn't get everything I wanted, they didn't get everything they wanted, maybe we found something that's just right. But other times, the real gift of negotiation is when you get more than what you wanted, they get more than what they wanted, and what ends up happening is even better than what anybody believed they could have to begin with. So let's get started with some of these ideas. If you have any questions or comments or anything that you want to share in the chat room, please post your messages. And a special shout out to Regina. So glad to have you. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so to begin, I think it's really critically important to understand that when we're engaging in a negotiation with somebody, we want to set some rules and parameters about how this conversation is going to go. All right, and so we agree that we're going to be respectful of each other. We agree that we're going to maintain our tone. We agree that if one of us needs to take a break from the conversation, we certainly can do that, that we're going to take turns talking to each other. We may employ a talking stick, to help regulate that. We recognize that we're just not going to bicker and argue for hours about this. We're going to discuss this for a certain period of time. I might even establish I get the floor for 2 minutes, you get the floor for 2 minutes, you get to rebut, I get to rebut, and then we'll try and make a decision. And then I think it's really important sometimes, especially when you're engaged in a conversation with your children, that at the very beginning, before the negotiation starts, you come to a conclusion. Is this your decision, or are you trying to convince me and this is my decision? Because if it's my decision, then we're going to negotiate, and ultimately I'm going to make that decision, and you have to live with that decision, or we're not going to bother even having this negotiation. If it's a joint decision, we're going to try and decide together. I think that knowing that at the onset is just a really critical perspective for both individuals in the in this given discussion opportunity. And then finally, what is the goal going into the negotiation? What is their goal? What is your goal? What is the ultimate goal of what you're trying to achieve? All right, so the next opportunity is, what are some of the keys to negotiation? And we've talked a little bit about them, but have a goal, make sure that you're going to be respectful, be flexible, because sometimes what somebody else is going to say to you might change or shift where you're coming from or what it is that you need or want to say, and then be willing to listen. And I'm not sure how many of you know this, but when when you're talking and your mouth is engaged, there's actually a portion of your eardrum that disengages and makes it more difficult for you to hear anything that is being said. And so listening to each other is a critical aspect to healthy negotiation. All right. So before going into it, talking about what is my message, what are the major points that you want to make during this conversation, this negotiation? I really want to make sure that I try and convince you that I want this, or that I believe this thing should happen. And these are the three major reasons why I believe that's really important. And I'm going to do my homework before going into that conversation with you. And this is something that I would encourage all parties to do. If you're going to engage and provide your child with an opportunity to negotiate with you, I would encourage you to have them do this in advance. We're going to talk about a more specific kind of framework to do that a little bit later in this conversation, but I think that's a really critical way to start. One of those communication workshops I did years ago, I learned this. What is communication math? 3 times 3 equals. Now I'm going to ask you to pop into the chat room and let me know what you think 3 times 3 equals in communication math. Let's see if we've got any folks who know. I'm going to give you 30 seconds to pop in your answer. All right, Kristen thinks it's 9. Will Womack, 9, question mark. You're starting to question yourself a little bit. Oh, Regina, it's just too hard. All right. Time's up in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The answer is 1. All right, now how is that possible? How is 3 times 3 equals 1? Well, have you ever listened to somebody interviewing somebody and they don't really answer the question that they were asked. They just find a way to continue to make the point that they wanted to make. All right, well, that's communication math. And so the way it works is, if I give you 3 messages and I give you those 3 messages 3 times, you might walk away from that conversation having heard 1 of my messages. And so when it's so critical and important to really determine what it is that you want to try and negotiate for or communicate for or get out of this conversation, you're going to want to make sure that in the dialogue, you keep weaving that thing that is important to you and why it's important to you over and over and over in the conversation, because that your listener will finally start to collect that. That's a fun one. 3 times 3 equals 1. All right. Again, something that some of our kids really struggle with, and that's eye contact. And eye contact, you can allow eye contact to disengage, but I think it's also important to recognize that eye contact sometimes really helps you make a point. And and sometimes even with a child, when you're talking, and some of the strategies that I'm giving you are both for both the child and the adult. Some of them are just for you. Some of them are more focused towards the adult. But when I'm trying to have a conversation with someone, and I recognize that eye contact is difficult for them, and they give eye contact to me, I often will acknowledge and appreciate. That's just a simple opportunity to say, hey, thanks so much for looking at me. It really lets me know that you're listening. Here's the point I want to make. All right. Refrain from sarcasms or put downs. The minute it goes to that place, that negotiation should end. The minute someone puts you down or does name calling or gets escalated or uses sarcasm, it's time. It doesn't mean that negotiation has to end. It just means that negotiation needs a break. All right. When dealing with an agitated person, if someone gets escalated, stop the negotiation, engage them at or below eye level, and just let them know that you love or care about them. And then sometimes you might just need to take a break and walk away. But you would be absolutely astonished how diffusing it is to reduce your position with a child or with anyone who's agitated and get at or below eye level so that you're not looming above them. It's a way to help reestablish rapport. All right, remind yourself to listen more than you talk. And when you're listening and really listening to somebody else, it might shift or change your perspective. Okay, so as we continue to go, if your child really wants to make a point, use props and charts. That has several benefits. One, it shows the person you're negotiating with that you've done your homework, which counts for a lot. The second is that it visually, we're both auditory and visual people, and when we see something visually, that can make a significant difference. And 3, it becomes a point of conversation and a point of discussion. All right. I think it's also important to speak in concise sentences. I have some dear friends that will ask if we can have a conversation to discuss something, and then they will find a way to say the same thing 5 different times, and will wax poetic and just drone on and on and on. I don't have the patience for that. And those of you who know me know just how ADHD I am. And so it's tough for me to listen to someone carry on a monologue for minutes and minutes and minutes. Figure out the quickest way to convey your message. Get in, get out, provide an opportunity for them to speak. And make sure that when you are having conversations in a negotiation, you make room for the dialogue back and forth. Because when it just becomes somebody who is just talking at you, how productive is that? How successful has it been for other people to talk at you and then get you to do the thing that they wanted them to do? All right. Don't begin a conversation until you know everyone is listening. Parts of that are creating a safe space to talk, a quiet space where there's not a bunch of listeners or an audience. Be willing to consider each other's viewpoints. Listening, paraphrase back, hey, okay, what I heard you say was, this is the point I think you're trying to make. Or in other words, And then again, creating those spaces for each of you to have a chance to have a conversation. Don't talk over each other, because when you talk over each other, the challenge is it becomes so difficult. Regina Carey just wrote, "Pretend words cost money." I love that. That's fun. So it's really important that, again, you are engaging in a dialogue, and when the dialogue stops being productive, the negotiation can stop. And even if it's just for 5 minutes, let's just take a 5-minute break and then we'll come back to it. So many arguments in my life have been diverted because A, I chose not to participate, or B, I chose to take a break from it. And then when I came back, I wasn't angry anymore. Never, never negotiate in an angry place, because at that point, you're not conveying the message that you want, nor are you open to what the other person has to say or thinking, or being open to a different idea. I think it's critical to encourage and reward questions, especially when parents are trying to negotiate with their kids. Tell me more about that. Or hey, thanks for asking that question. I really appreciate having a chance to explain that further. And that, again, helps develop and build important rapport that allows us to make that a more successful engagement. Okay. I also think that prior to any quality negotiation between family members, it really is important to be able to, in a thoughtful, quality way, communicate your thoughts and feelings. I know that when something was my decision, the kids would go to my wife, Dorothy, and they would practice in advance having that conversation with me. And that was very effective for them. I think that any member of the family should be able to call a meeting if they've got an issue they want to discuss, and then be willing to develop those rules about how that decision is going to come to, and then negotiate a solution. I also think that people don't realize that often up to 85% of what you communicate is done through facial expressions and nonverbal communication. And so if you are saying things with a tone of voice, again, that's while that's verbal, that's the nonverbal part of that communication. How about this one? This was my dad's specialty. And sometimes he would do the infinity eye roll, the figure 8 eye roll, or just like, oh, or those sounds. So if those kinds of things are happening, they're not a healthy way to develop kind of the negotiation. If you see the partner that you're having a conversation with start to rub their temples or cross their arms or get really stressed, it becomes very difficult for you to develop that rapport that allows you to move forward in a really thoughtful way. There's something called matching rapport, and so if someone's arms are crossed and you cross your arms and you're talking to each other, and then you set your arms down by your side, watch to see if they do the same thing. And or if you cross your legs, see if they cross their legs. And if your bodies are mimicking each other, then you are in rapport. And that neurolinguistic processing is fully engaged, and you are in flow with each other. You're connecting, and you're, as the kids call it now, you're vibing. You're feeling what each other are saying, and you're really listening to one another. But if one person is like this, and the other person's open, and you can clearly see the other one looking away, there's not negotiation occurring there. There's conflict that needs to be dealt with and resolved, or taken a break from, and be able to come back to that. I love I statements. I feel this way. I want, I will, I need, instead of you, point the thumb, not the finger. And then if you find that you're just continuing to escalate and that the conversation is not healthy, perhaps you're going to finish that conversation through technology, either through emails or texts with each other. And the nice thing about text is you actually can look at it before you send. And the same with an email. And you don't have to look at, or, or hear or see some of the nonverbal communication that's occurring. And just what you need or want is being conveyed on the page. So usually when you think about negotiation, you think about compromise. You get a little bit of what you want, they get a little bit of what they want, and that's great. And sometimes that's the best you can hope for. But there is this elusive thing called synergy, or the win-win. And the win-win is a solution when they take the best of what you want and the best of what they want, and you get something better than what either one of you wanted in the first place. Now, that is the gold standard. That is the thing you seek. And it doesn't happen all the time, but when it does, it just feels so wonderful. An example of that was not too long ago. We were trying to decide as a family what we wanted to do on a Saturday, and one of us, me, wanted to do a 4-hour hike to go visit some waterfalls, and another one of us just really didn't want to go hiking. What they really wanted was to go see the newest and latest movie. And so, and yet another person, they were like, well, I don't really want to do either of those things. I just kind of want to go out to eat. Well, what we ended up doing was we ended up driving over to Cherokee, where there's a really nice movie theater. And we got to go to a beautiful waterfall that was only a 10-minute walk from the parking area. And we visited we visited 2 waterfalls on the way to the movie theater. And then right before, we had time to go to a Mexican restaurant where we all had this wonderful feast, got to see a movie. Everybody got the best pieces of everything they wanted. And that day was a win-win. Think about communicating and writing. Record your thoughts in advance. Determine what it is that you need or want to say. And then maybe present an outline of what you're trying to accomplish or a proposal. Now, here, I've done an entire webinar about the proposal system, but I'm going to give you just a quick snapshot of it now. The proposal is the team presents a proposal, or child, what they want, the change they're asking for, the reward they'd like to earn, along with a rationale. They're then going to give me a list of reasons why I might say no, and then they're going to have solutions to overcome each of those challenges of why I might say no, and then they're going to provide the conditions for maintaining the change provided. Now, they've done all this work in advance. They come to the negotiation, they hand me this proposal, and if I have a significant concern that's not been addressed, I will look at it and I will say, okay, well, what about this? And I'll give it back to them, and they'll go back and they'll find a solution to that challenge. This has been at play at SOAR for many years. It was developed by a gentleman named Logan Walters in our employ years ago. And I have used this very successfully both here and at home. So this is what it looked like from my son. This was the actual proposal that he wrote. This is his work. He is now a sophomore at App State, and recently spoke to this proposal as being kind of a seminal point in his academic career to help figure out. Now, it's tough to read his chicken scratch, and so I'm going to show you what he wrote. He wrote, my proposal is to be able to use the computer before homework, because my rule was you can't play on the computer until you get home from school and your homework is done. And he wrote, this is why it should be passed. And I'm gonna do in my best J voice as he was negotiating this. I'm now in the 7th grade, and the rule was put in place so that I could, to help me make through my homework. But Dad, I really do usually get my work done. And here's why you might say no, because, we've had this rule for a long time, and you like the rule because, you want me to finish my homework. And, Dad, I know it bugs you when I'm on the computer all the time. but here, I'll get my work done by 9:30. And if I don't get it done, I won't have access to my computer the next day. And if I don't get it done by 9:30, I lose, I lose it for the next day. See, Dad, when I come home, I just my mind needs a break. so he wrote this proposal, and I was so tickled with it. I said, okay, buddy, you set good conditions. We're gonna go ahead and give this a try. And within a month, it became clear to us both that that this wasn't going to work, and that he needed to go back to doing his homework before the computer, which taught him a valuable lesson and that he still utilizes today. I need to get my work done before I play, because when I start to play, I put everything to the side and I don't get my work done. And so here was a negotiation that we engaged in. It was ultimately my decision. I allowed for him to give this a chance. We used the proposal system for years after that, but this was our first opportunity to do so. And it was really, really successful, even though it wasn't successful, because it really helped him move to a place where he understood why he needed to do what I asked him to do. So a couple recap items: plan ahead, know what you want, which leads to determining your message, which leads to asking questions, negotiating decisions, setting new goals, which may then result in a new conversation in which you have to plan ahead and redefine what it is that you want. You see, there are two final points I want to make here. Self-advocacy, helping your children learn how to self-advocate, and the art of negotiation. It's an individual's ability to effectively communicate, convey, negotiate, or assert his or her own interest, desires, needs, and rights. It involves making informed decisions and taking responsibility for those decisions. And I can think of no greater example of that than the proposal system that Jay and I worked on, because it allowed him to make informed decisions about his life that still are at play today, because he was allowed to convey, negotiate, and assert his or her own interests, and then learn a really valuable lesson in that process. All right, and then the final piece that I want to talk about today is the greatest gift that this negotiation, these ideas that I presented to you today, is that the ultimate goal is that you want your kids to understand, these are my strengths, these are my challenges, these are the tools I need to be successful, and how to go get those things, how to negotiate to make sure that they are doing things that play to their strengths, that help them overcome their challenges and allow them to be the most successful version of the person that they possibly can be. So I'm going to open it up for any questions that folks have, and give you a chance to share any thoughts or ideas. Regina, I guess heard this workshop years ago, and it's worked well. I love your comment. This could single-handedly knock out complaining. The beautiful thing about being willing to establish the idea of developing some of these boundaries in negotiation is it does stop being an argument and becomes a conversation, and the rules to that conversation can be so empowering for kids. Are there any other thoughts or questions? Okay, well, I haven't set up the next set of webinars for next month. I will, but if you've got some ideas for some things that you want to look at after you've checked out our website, www.soarnc.org/webinars, you're welcome to throw it out there. If you did not get a chance to check out last month's Grit, the Art of Perseverance, I really love that workshop and recognize that grit is something that so many of our kids need and could benefit from. And then please feel free to share this with anyone that you believe might need or want it. Thank you so much for joining us today. And this webinar will be available online in a week. Our team that's doing that is on vacation, and you can download the PowerPoint and share it as much and as often as you need or want to. Thank you so much. Please have a wonderful holiday season, and I appreciate all of you. Now go have some fun with kids. Bye-bye.